Hi everyone, welcome to the virtual presentation. It's a becoming topic of about 8 minutes, and the process and narrative can be quite absurd. Artists think they know what they're doing when they're at the height of their creativity. In fact, they have no idea what they're doing. Obviously, this passage is saying to myself particularly that becoming has been going on like Bergson's concept of duration, that it is impossible to interrupt, that there is only a dead end to evolution, and that there is no road to no longer evolve. For you who are in front of the screen, do you know how you are becoming? As for plaster statues, if you're familiar with Chinese art education, then you can't be unaware of its existence, and it's even possible that you've pinched, smashed and painted it yourself, because it is almost equivalent to all the memories of art in the childhood of those children born in China. It is necessary to be specific about what exactly the plaster statue here is. To put it simply, it's those cheap sculptures for students to learn about the plastic arts, the stencils of which are mostly from ancient Rome, ancient Greece, and the Renaissance, such as Julius Caesar, Venus, and Michelangelo's The David. Faces selected from these classics allow students to exercise a disciplined set of artistic logic while also clarifying the ambiguity of history in their minds. In other words, anyone who has undergone plaster training has inscribed in their mind a linear history that must be remembered. After discussing the basic history of the plaster statue, we have to mention its material. Compared to marble and bronze, plaster has several distinctive features. It is lightweight, affordable, and easy to reproduce. As if the majesty and heaviness of the past history were removed and replaced by cheap sportswear that is comfortable for modern civilization. Thus, it will no longer be confined to a fixed field such as the form of a monument standing in a public place, but will be transformed into property that can be privately occupied. The plaster statues thus satisfy the public's curiosity about the original sacredness of these statues from a long history. In other words, the light scattered around the statues has been wiped down to a glossy finish, leaving only the luster of sterilized water. Returning to the discussion of art education, we see a scene like this picture, which is no longer a replica for the masses to collect, but a tool for training people to become replicas, whose purpose seems so strikingly similar to the self-properties just mentioned, as if it is bent on making students follow the path it has taken, a path of replication. With students painting plastered heads not so much as artistic training but the training of replicas of rules. In other words, students keep imitating and trying to get close to these famous masters like Michelangelo, because they are the golden dividing line, the archetype of beauty, the model of art. Thus, when we look at the Red Head series completed in 2013, the abandoned plaster figures are dusted in a blood-colored canvas, and the decapitated parts, both the head and the torso, seem to have been severed like specimens from the original living statues, revealing the time of solidification of this series of works. It comes with a day of historical judgment for every art student, the day of the art school exam. This exam will determine your future chances of getting into a higher art education institution. In this sacred and at the same time physically and mentally exhausting moment, it organized a performance of worship and performance art called Gaokao, the college entrance exam, which was chosen to take place on the grounds of the China Academy of Art on the day the exam ended. There were 12 people in total, divided into 6 groups. The act was filmed in 2 scenes, indoor and outdoor. Each person in the room was handed a mask, paper and pen to write down their psychological description of the day after the exam, and after completing their descriptions, they went to an iconic lake at the Academy for a so-called worship act. The work shares the entire record of the 3 spots, and preserves the drawings of the psychological depictions, the masks, and the paper that was turned into ashes during the worship process. In 2016, it really came to the main site USA, where Contemporary Art Capital operates. No longer to learn about the production of art through a museum window, but to go deep inside. So began a series of so-called contemporary art experiments, the theme of which took over from the main focus of the Redhead and the Galcow works. What is art? Is there a standard for art? And if there is a standard, in what way does it appear? One of the more important works of this period is The Three Stones, a collection of 3 stones of identical appearance and a string of words printed on long strips of paper. Under the influence of Duchamp and conceptual art of the 1960s such as Joseph Kosuth, it was 3 identical-looking stones put together. Then the question soon came up, can there really be 2 identical things in this world? Not even a leaf is the same. Does the stone have a chance? The confusion that bubbles up in the mind at this point is precisely what McLuhan calls the legacy of post-industrialization in some people, and a concrete manifestation of the dominance of their eyes over understanding information. Thus, this work seems to intentionally let our vision give way to the see position. Otherwise everything is chaotic and untenable. Once the metaphysical reflection started, the problem immediately became that art was no longer a medium that had to be clung to in the general sense of the word, but that its existence could sometimes be even words, such as performance, in which case Beuys naturally appeared in his brain nerves. The concept of social sculpture began to pique its interest, and a vision of artistic participation in political life was born. In 2017, it went back to China because of transferring schools and planned a project called The Big Apple. In short, it is a work that takes aim at China's art education system and casts doubt on the artistic talent and definition of art that it produces. This was demonstrated by the collage that it selected to be carried out on the day of the art school examinations on the publicity board of the Drawing Learning Studio not far from the entrance and exit of the campus. It is important to mention here the specificity of the material of this work, which consists entirely of boxes of pigments that the candidates must use in the color exam. And the content of the image is precisely what the candidates are most used to exercising their abilities, the apple. This is the first time it has interacted with the public in an artistic way, and the expected crowds have been replaced by only a few lingering moments of test takers and parents, so it can be said that the work has undoubtedly failed on the level of effectiveness. I think its main failure lies in the fact that if contemporary art is compared to a syntax structure, most works that are successful in a general sense or that are also interesting tend to generate possibilities, i.e. produce questioning sentences. Great works, even antithetical questioning sentences, or are simply divorced from the definition of a sentence as poetry. And apparently this work seems to be a repetition of a fact that is already known to the masses, which is at best a synonymous sentence. The reflections this work brought directly led me from conceptual art to a path of philosophical reflection, where the question of what art is became less important. What art can do and how to do it to unleash its potential, or the potential of the person itself, began to become more and more important in its eyes. Before closing, I was working on a long-term project of my own called shooting. which was inspired by Susan Sontag's interpretation of the act of taking photographs in the Book of Unphotography. To photograph is to appropriate the thing photographed. It means putting myself into a certain relation to the world that feels like knowledge, and therefore, like power. I wanted to explore the possibility of this subject further with a clip from this work. To photograph is to become the thing photographed. It means putting myself into a certain relation to the world that you may don't familiar with.